These cooking techniques are among the rarest and oldest in the world. From an 86-year-old dough maker in Greece who is one of the last to make thin phyllo by hand, to a family in India that uses methods dating back to the 1500s of trampling on cashew fruit to make a rare liquor, and the soy sauce artisan in Japan who brews his recipe in handmade barrels that last 100 years. We will take you on a tour of 5 of the world's culinary gems to see how their centuries-old traditions are still standing.
Making phyllo by hand can take up to 4 hours. The super thin, layered dough is used in many dishes in Greek cuisine, like the famous baklava. And at 86 years old, Yurios Hatziparaskos is one of the few bakers in Greece that still makes it manually.
Ίσως με κρατάει στη ζωή.
He started baking as a teenager and was able to buy his own workshop in the 1960s. At one point, bakeries like his were all over Greece. But the rise of cheap and efficient industrial baking meant that many mom-and-pop shops just couldn't stay afloat.
Είναι λίγα το καιρός τώρα, λόγω της βιομηχανίας.
Yurios found a way to stay in business by focusing on the tourist trade and employing only his wife Katerina and his son Paraskevas. We visited their half-century-old bakery to see how it is still standing. Every day around 8 a.m., Yurios opens the doors to their workshop and Katerina hangs signs to draw people in. The 17th century Venetian-style house stands in the heart of the old town in Rethymno on the Greek island of Crete. To start the phyllo dough, Yurios puts just 3 ingredients into a large mixer: flour, water, and salt. Half an hour later, he transfers the mixture to this roller machine to be flattened and stretched. Paraskevas portions out smaller pieces that need to be exactly
1 kilo, 300.
Αυτό έχει να κάνει με τις διαστάσεις του τραπεζιού στο οποίο θα το ανοίξουμε. Αν το τραπέζι ήταν μεγαλύτερο, θα ήθελε περισσότερη ζύμη, οπότε θα βάζαμε παραπάνω ζυμάρι.
While father and son knead the dough balls, mother cooks lunch. Yurios rolls each piece by hand, shaping them into discs. Then it's time for the toss. There is a reason behind this eye-catching technique.
Το βοηθάει να γίνει λίγο πιο λεπτό στη μέση, επειδή το χοντρό κομμάτι μένει στην άκρη που το τραβάς. Να μην μείνει πολύ χοντρό στη μέση.
The dough is stretched over and over again until the whole table is covered. It becomes so thin, you can read through it. Katerina covers each dough layer with linen to absorb moisture slowly without losing elasticity. Then, the family repeats the process layer by layer until there's several tissue-thin sheets stacked on each table. Going round and round the table is so physically demanding that Yurios has to rest in between turns.
Είναι πολύ σκληρή η δουλειά και το φύλλο.
Once the dough is slightly dry, it's ready to be folded. For the Hatziparaskoses, it's almost like a dance, with precisely coordinated movements, including a dusting of flour to prevent the sheets from sticking together. The phyllo leaves are then cut to size to be stored in the fridge until they're sold. But all this work doesn't guarantee big sales.
Εκείνο το φύλλο που μαζέψαν ή και ρωτούσαν και λέει 320 φύλλα, του είπα ζήτημα να είναι 12 κιλά. Αν τα δώσεις ζαχαροπλαστείο είναι 60 ευρώ.
So the family's profits rely mostly on the sweets sold to tourists that come in curious to see how phyllo is handmade.
Πριν 10 χρόνια ή πιο παλιά είχαμε πάνω από 100 ξενοδοχεία πελάτες. Αλλά η εκβιομηχάνηση σιγά σιγά τους έκανε να αγοράζουν τα έτοιμα προϊόντα.
Machine-made phyllo is cheaper and faster. Efficient industrial production lines can churn out 100 to 300 kilograms of dough an hour. The stiff competition doesn't deter Yurios. He also makes kataifi, a shredded pastry that is even more taxing for the 86-year-old. It takes him 3 hours, and it sells for even less than the traditional sheets of phyllo.
Βγάζουμε λίγο γιατί οι τουρίστες που έρχονται να το δουν, να βγάλουν μια φωτογραφία και πουλάμε γλυκά. Δύσκολο, μπορεί να μην το πετύχει, να το πετάξει όλο. Όλο έτσι. Βράδυ πονάμε.
Και κάποιες φορές αν νιώθεις κουρασμένος, βλέποντάς το να συνεχίζει σε αυτήν την ηλικία να δουλεύει, ξεχνάς την κούραση και συνεχίζεις κι εσύ.
Paraskevas is actually an engineer, but he found himself without a job after the 2010 economic crisis in Greece. So he decided to help his parents with the family business.
Ούτε εγώ δεν περίμενα που θα φτάξω. Έλεγα άμα πάω στα 60 χρόνια, 65, θα βάλω και το στρατό να πάρω τη σύνταξη να κάτσω. Μετά λέω, άντε ακόμα άλλα 5 χρόνια, άντε άλλα 5 χρόνια.
Just as Yorgos's business depends on tourism, he too loves to travel when he can.
Αγγλία, Αούστρια, Βιέννα, Γαλλία, Ουγγάρια, Βουδαπέστη, Ισπάνια, Μαρόκο. Εδώ πέρα δουλεύω και δεν μένει χρόνος να βγω καθόλου. Μία εβδομάδα φεύγω και πάω έξω και έτσι λέω στον τουρίστα, τουρίστα εσύ, τουρίστα και εμείς.
If it weren't for the COVID-19 pandemic, he would have visited the Netherlands to see friends he made when they visited his shop year after year. Greece was quick to control the spread of the virus from the spring through the summer, but cases have spiked in the fall and brought the country to a nationwide second lockdown in November. Tourist traffic to the Hatziparaskis' workshop has dropped significantly in 2020. Lines to get in weren't uncommon in better years.
Εσύ ξέρεις από κρου που ήταν. Όταν έφανε σε ένα κρου που ήταν 20 άτομα, ήταν πιο ελεύθερα.
But it still remains an important landmark for the community, and locals will say it's the town's main attraction.
Το 2007, τέτοιο καιρό, στη γιορτή τουρισμού, στις 27 Σεπτεμβρίου, μας βράδυσε στον κήπο ο Δήμος Ρεθύμνης για την προσφορά μας στον τουρισμό. Το βραβείο του καλού επαγγελματία. Ο Δήμαρχος εδάκρυσε, διότι είπα ευχαριστώ το Δήμο και αυτό ήρθα από τόσα χρόνια που αυτό, τα τουριστικά γραφεία, τους ξεναργούς, τα μέσα αυτά που με κάνουν διάσημα και τελευταίως τη σύζυγό μου.
Πιστεύω αυτό ικανοποιεί και τους γονείς και ειδικά τον πατέρα μου που χαίρεται που κάποιος θα το συνεχίσει. Ελπίζω και κάποιο από τα παιδιά μου να έρθουν έτσι τα πράγματα ώστε να ασχοληθεί επαγγελματικά.
A 17th century inscription above the door has been there since long before the family moved in, and it serves as a reminder of the importance of their work. In virtue, a house shines.
Soy sauce is one of the most important ingredients in Japanese cuisine. Yet only 1% of the country's supply is made through the traditional method of barrel aging. That's because it can take 4 years for one batch to go from barrel to bottle. Yasuo Yamamoto is a 5th-generation soy sauce maker, and one of the only brewers in the country who hand builds his own barrels.
木桶で作るとうまいんですよ。
Most fermented seasonings in Japan used to be made this way, but industrialization replaced almost all the country's wooden barrels with steel. Today, the average soy sauce is made through a shorter, chemicalized process. So what does it take to make authentic soy sauce? And how is this centuries-old method still standing? What makes the soy sauce special is the wooden barrel, called kiyoke. One can last for over a century. Yasuo makes bamboo strips to wrap around the barrel because the saltiness of the soy sauce can corrode metal.
こういう竹だと塩分にも強いので100年持ちます。
It takes at least 3 people to assemble one barrel. But not many do this anymore. After modern machinery took over the market, almost all kiyoke makers in Japan went out of business. So Yasuo learned to make his own.
ここから今からきれいにします。きれいにお化粧する感じですね。
Before these barrels are put to use, crushed wheat and steamed soybeans are mixed with koji, the fungus that will kickstart the fermentation process. This giant vat regulates temperature so the fungus can grow. After 2 days, the mixture goes to the Moromi house. This is where the wooden barrels help create the breeding ground for the bacteria.
お醤油を発酵させる菌の、住処になるんですよ。
Over 1 ton of the soybean mixture fills each barrel, along with salt water. While Yasuo and his team stir, the soybeans bump up against each other and create tiny tears so that other bacteria can get in and start to break them down. The workers pump air into the barrel to make the aerobic yeast more active. Even though Yasuo says the microbes do most of the work, his part of the job is still demanding.
大変体力的にきついです。一番大変だった時は2ヶ月で9キロ痩せました。これ大変やなと思ってもおもろいなと思うと。
He checks on the soybeans every day to see if they need mixing. And based on their scent and appearance, he can tell where they are in the process.
私の経験上うちの場合最初リンゴの香りがするんですよ。その次にバナナの香りがする。
The soybeans will ferment here for at least a year and a half. Yasuo has 87 barrels in different phases. He believes a good barrel is one that will outlive him.
この桶で、だいたい今150年ぐらい使ってます。
These types of barrels have been in production in Japan since at least the 17th century. But everything changed during World War II, when materials became more scarce and expensive in Japan. The government knew its people couldn't live without their staple seasoning. So they ordered factories to make production cheaper and faster, cutting the process from years to months. So while many brewers expanded and modernized, small businesses like Yasuo's families could barely keep up.
なのでうちはタンクも買えない近代化の工場に出資できないお金がないので。
Yasuo stepped in 2003, just before his father suddenly became sick and had to retire. So he had to take over and pull a struggling business out of debt. He also had to teach himself a lot of the process, like how to use the press. After a year and a half of fermentation, Yasuo pipes the soybean mixture into this machine. He layers on a piece of traditional wrapping cloth. Then the machine slowly squeezes out the soy sauce over 10 days.
で最初は自分の重さで自然に醤油が垂れていく。で毎日少しずつ重ねていくとまた上の重さが加わるのでじわっと絞れてきて。
Some industrial factories press it all at once, but Yasuo says getting a quality product is all about patience. After this stage, some of the soy sauce goes back into the barrel with more soybeans and wheat for 2 more years to make Yasuo's main product, saishikomi, a darker, stronger tasting soy sauce. When the microbes have enough time to naturally ferment the soybeans, it gives the soy sauce a sweeter aftertaste. Some industrial brands mimic this by adding sweeteners.
でうちのお醤油の場合は、無添加で何も入ってないですけど最初若干塩味がきますけどあとじわーっとね塩味が消えて甘みになるんです。
That balanced umami flavor is what chefs like Hitoshi Kishimoto are after. He's been running his restaurant Koyomi in Shotoshima for 5 years. For almost every dish, he cooks with naturally fermented soy sauce, including Yasuo's brand.
その時の熱意っていうのが多分味にも栄えてる反映してるなと思って。で今回はだいたい5種類のお醤油を使ってそのバランスを取ります。それを組み合わせることで一つのものができるというのがすごく面白い味付けになると思うのでこの場合はとても大切にしています。日本人にとって醤油というのがとても身近で親しみやすい昔からの馴染みの味だということがなくなって回っては困るし。
In order for traditional soy sauce to continue, barrel production needs to keep up. That's why Yasuo holds barrel making workshops every year.
でうちで職人を育成する。 で世界中の人たちに本物を味わってもらう。
He sells his authentic soy sauce to people all over the world. A bottle goes for $35 on Amazon, around triple the price of a commercial alternative.
でもやっぱりそのこう本当に美味しい記憶で作ったお醤油がゼロになるって本物がなくなることじゃないですか。
For Yasuo, passing down the legacy of barrel-aged soy sauce is part of his life's mission.
私その駅伝だと思ってるんですよ。この蔵と桶とこの金の生態系と次の息子の代に渡すのが私の仕事。孫やひ孫が袴に来た時にあのじいさん何言い出したか桶作るって言ったから俺ら桶も作れるし醤油も作れるなって言ったら嬉しいでしょ。だからやるんですよ。
Juice from cashew fruit is the one ingredient in Feni, a rare liquor made only in this part of the world. This family is one of the few still using techniques that date back to the 1500s. While some brands are pushing to bring Feni to the mainstream, these farmers found a way to stay in business by hand-making small batches and selling locally. We visited Goa, India, to see how this centuries-old tradition is still standing. The Gaunkar family searches their land for fallen fruits every morning. The fruits fall when they're ripe. They use a wooden stick with a needle at the end to pick up each cashew fruit. Drupati Gaunkar is the matriarch of the 100-year-old family operation. She's been making Feni for 60 years and took over the business after her husband passed away.
आता माझ्या सऱ्या वयता थंयसर लोक कोणालो बरो अमकेलो सरो बरो ती अजून बरो काडटा सरो अशें म्हणटा आनी लोक खबर आसलेलो येता सगळो.
During Feni season, from March to April, her children and grandchildren help out. After filling around 8 buckets in an hour, they take out the seeds. One by one, the family separates the cashew fruit from the cashew nut. They sell the raw cashews to factories that roast and package them. Then it's time to juice. Santosh Gaunkar puts on mining boots. The hard soles get more juice out of the fruits. He grew up helping his mother on the farm and has been doing this full-time for 25 years.
मेरे अंदाज से वो पूरा पहले से ही स्टार्ट हुआ लगता है मेरे को.
Little by little, he stomps away. The family used to use a big wooden stick for this step, but they eventually found that stomping with their feet was more effective. It can get slippery, so Santosh holds on tight for balance. Juicing a full vat of cashew apples takes about an hour. And in the 100-degree heat, it can be exhausting.
मेहनत का काम है लेकिन आदमी मेहनत किया ना और थोड़ा फ्रेश रहता है बाद में और थोड़ा नींद भी अच्छा आता है रात शाम को.
During breaks, they get fresh cashew fruit juice that you can't find in stores. It has a shelf life of just 1 day. Then, Santosh piles the last bits of fruit into a mound. He wraps it with a rope and drags a few rocks on top to squeeze out every last drop of juice. They leave the fruits like this overnight. Machines would speed up this process, but it's not an option for this family.
लोग मशीन नहीं ला सकते हैं ना और हम लोग को गरीब का ऐसा हम लोग को ऐसा पाँव से ये करता है.
Plus, Santosh says handmade Feni tastes better.
इसमें मशीन में डालने के टाइम वो क्या उसमें पतरे का है लगता है जंग लगता है. वो जंग लगे ना उसका ये स्माइल पतरे का उसमें दारू में इसमें रस में मिलता है और इसमें हम लोग पाँव में क्या आता है वो फ्रेश आता है.
They throw away the fruit waste or give it to farmers to use as cattle feed. Bucket by bucket, they filter out any pulp fibers through a cloth. Then the juice sits to ferment for 2 or 3 days. They transfer it into a copper drum. Meanwhile, Drupadi prepares to seal the drum by dousing a piece of cloth in mud. The mud comes from nearby ant hills. The ants and snakes that live in these mounds refine the soil, which makes it better for sealing the tanks.
तो इसमें पत्थर ज़्यादा यूज़ नहीं होता है, ज़्यादा होता नहीं, तो लेता नहीं, खाली मट्टी रहता है।
Drupadi wraps the clay-covered cloth around the openings to ensure no air escapes. She lights a fire to heat the juice, using wood harvested from their land. It burns for around 8 hours. Steam passes through the pipe and into a tank filled with water. It cools down the vapor, and a slow stream of arak comes out the other end. Arak is a less alcoholic beverage that the family sells when there's demand. Otherwise, they put it back into the copper pot and distill it for another 7 to 8 hours. Once it reaches the right temperature, it's feni, with 40 to 45% alcohol. They also test it by looking at the bubbles, which should be big and spread apart slowly. The family learned this through decades of experience and close observation.
ये फेनी का मतलब क्या है, उसमें प्रोसेस है कि प्योर रहता है। वो दूसरा क्या दारू निकाल दो, उसमें कुछ केमिकल ये सब मिक्स करता है।
They make 175 liters of feni every season and usually sell all of it to local buyers. But business today looks a little different than it used to. People in nearby villages have moved to bigger cities for work, so fewer people come by to drink feni.
येताले म्हणजे दिसा कितें तुगेले 200-300 रुपयाचो पूण कितें येपीत जातालो आतां ते मेले बावडे सगळे.
The family brings in around 50,000 Indian rupees, or nearly $700 in a season. And their operation probably won't be getting any bigger, since buying more land can be expensive. The government auctions off trees to the highest bidder.
पहले क्या गरीब लोग के पास अब पैसा नहीं रहता ना उसको बोनी लगाने के लिए, जो पैसा रहेगा उसको बोनी मिलेगा, वही उन लोग को मिलता है, इसलिए वो लोग ज़्यादा लोग कम हो गया.
Meanwhile, other feni makers in Goa are looking to expand the market and popularize the drink. A brand called Kazulo draws in locals and tourists with a tasting room and distillery tours.
Basically, when you step out from here, you are baptized into a new feni drinker.
One of the tour's big attractions is the underwater aging technique. Workers have to dive in the water to pull out aged bottles of feni.
We have feni that has been resting for more than 2 years so that the flavors mellow down but under controlled temperature. It was an old technique used by the Georgians for wines.
Kazulo gets its feni from local farmers who hand make it in the traditional way, just like the Gaunkar family. Some of these methods date back to at least the 1500s, when farmers in this region used to make liquor from coconut palm sap, called toddy.
Our ancestors had this thought where they said, you know what, let's innovate. Let's take an extra step ahead. You know, if we can do a distilled toddy, which has sugar, let's try distilling fruits.
After the Portuguese brought cashew trees from Brazil to Goa, at some point during the 16th century, distilling cashew feni became more common since it was easier to produce. It's been popular throughout Goa ever since, but it hasn't been able to break out beyond state lines.
Feni comes under the country liquor category. That very notion puts you in a place saying that, you know what, it's an inferior spirit. The world outside Goa is so difficult to enter in terms of spirit. It is a great spirit with a great story and a great culture, but we've not been able to put it out. So we use chili and salt. We've been in a bubble for more than 200 years, where feni has existed but never spoken about, and now it's time that we come out of a bubble.
For the Gaunkar family, they're not sure how much longer their business will sustain them.
इधर यही काम करके हम लोग का नहीं मिलेगा, कल बाद में वो झाड़ मर गया तो बाद में हम लोग का झाड़ कैसा, क्यों हम लोग को वही पेट भरने का काम है ना, इसलिए हम लोग को क्या है वही उसका एग्रीकल्चर करके उसका बढ़ाने का, उसका झाड़ लगाने का, वही प्रोसेस चालू करने का हम लोग का, वही इसमें हम लोग का जाता है लाइफ.
This is one of the oldest businesses in Japan, and aburi mochi is the only food on the menu. For over 1,000 years, the restaurant has served worshippers who visit the Shinto shrine next door to pray for good health. Many believe eating the roasted rice cakes will protect them from diseases too. The shop has survived fires, civil and world wars, and even smallpox epidemics. Through it all, 25 generations of one family kept it going, blending food and faith. But COVID-19 has threatened the business more than anything else. We visited Ichimonji Iwasuke in Kyoto to see how it is still standing. It all starts with the skewers. Owner Naomi Hasegawa cuts them from a special bamboo grown for ritual purposes around the shrine. That's why they're considered sacred and treated with as much care as any ingredient. The important job of sterilizing them is only for the okami, the owner and manager.
やはり神様からいただいた櫛ですので、使えるうちは何回でも使おう、もったいないし大事に使おうという精神でやらせていただいてます。
Next, she makes the sweet miso dipping sauce. Naomi knows the recipe by heart. She measures ingredients by eye and feels the mixture for consistency. She learned it all from her aunt, the former okami.
先代はもう堅くなに一人でずっとやってらっしゃいましたけども、やはり今の世の中いつ何時何があるかわからないので、みんなができるように、家族の女がみんなができるようには教えてあります。
She combines today's batch with yesterday's leftovers for a richer flavor. Ichiwa uses a machine to make the mochi dough instead of the traditional method of steaming and pounding with a mallet.
きっとご先祖様も私らが餅つき機を使っていることを怒ってると思いますのででも大きな大量生産をしているわけではなく、一薄一薄を必ず自分たちでするようにはしてますので、そこの機械は使いますけれども、本来の気持ちっていうのは全く変わってないと思います。こちらは光神様、火の神様です。
Every day, she makes the first mochi as an offering for the gods and her ancestors. Then it's time to put it all together. Naomi and her employees work on a woven mat covered in roasted soybean powder. They cover the mochi in it, then measure thumb-sized pieces to stick on a skewer.
これも昔の理にかなったやり方なんですけれども、お餅ってプーッと膨れるんです。そうすると1本刺しだとポロッと落ちる。でもこう2本刺しだと落ちない。グッと締まってるっていうのが昔から確かに先人の知恵で。
To roast the mochi, she shuffles them until they reach a consistent dark color. It only takes about 1 minute, but it requires close attention since the mochi could easily overcook, or even worse, the bamboo could burn. She's even particular about the charcoal she uses. This is binchotan, a high-quality oak charcoal that's much harder than regular coals.
なぜかというと、硬いのと日持ちがいい。火が長く持つというのと、それと香りがいい。
Aburi means to roast, so this is what makes the snack aburi mochi.
このお餅を焼くという作業については、やはり10年ぐらいの修行をした人間でないとなかなかうまくは焼けないですね。
She dips the aburi mochi into the miso sauce while they're still warm. 11 skewers and a cup of green tea cost 500 yen, or just under $5. Naomi and her predecessor have kept that price steady for over 30 years, but have had to bring the number of skewers down from 15.
うちの兄は当主ですけれども、すごく儲ける必要はないと、もともとがご奉仕からできてる商売ですので、商いというのは商いようにするのが商いというふうに言われております。
The Imamiya shrine that Ichiwa serves was founded in 994 as Kyoto was suffering from epidemics like smallpox. Locals worshipped Shinto deities who were believed to cure diseases and grant long life. Naomi says Ichiwa's original founders served the chief priest and then started the shop to serve worshippers as well. They used to give a burimochi away for free and only sometimes received a small gratuity from pilgrims. From the beginning, it's been traditional for women in the family to run the business.
男はみんな外で自分たちの家族の生活費を働いてくれてます、稼いでくれてますので、ですから女がここで働くのは家を守るという、ここのあぶり餅一文字屋を守るというので、私は娘ですけれども兄嫁も弟嫁もここを守る。
Naomi is the 25th Okami to run Ichiwa, taking over for her aunt 13 years ago. And she has made a few improvements to bring the business into the modern age, like providing insurance to its employees and installing a time card system. But she draws the line at using delivery apps.
うちは丁寧にお断りしました。そうして持っていくようなお餅ではないです。ここにお参りに来ていただいて、あぶり餅があるので、お参りもせずに神様に予定も合わせずにUber Eatsで持っていくというような、そんな商品はっていうかあぶり餅は作ってないです。
Although Ichiwa was born from a time of plague, nothing could have prepared the staff for the coronavirus pandemic. The shop was forced to close for nearly 2 months in 2020, and it took on debt to ensure employees were still getting paid even while it was shut. Even the government's National Tourism Incentive Program wasn't enough to bring many customers back.
お正月とか三が日っていうのは私どもにとってはものすごく大切な、神社に参拝する日ですので、ものすごく大切な三が日なんですけれども、このコロナで半分以下の人手になってました。
Naomi's hopes for the future lie in the next generation of her family. She believes her children, or nieces and nephews, will take over for her, but there's no set succession plan. And that's intentional.
誰か一人って決めたらものすごくプレッシャーで、私がプレッシャーで嫌なようにプレッシャーになります。その時神様が、ご先祖様が決めてくれると思います。
She says she'd enjoy retirement, but until that day, there are faithful visitors to feed.
だから今宮神社さんがあるうちは私どもは辞めないつもりです。今宮神社さんが潰れたとともに私どもは引こうと思ってます。そこまでは辞めない。多分ご先祖様もみんなそうだと思います。
This is an ancient cooking tool called a metate. Women in Mexico have been using it for over 7,000 years to prepare traditional dishes. Evangelina Aquino Luis spends hours grinding chilies and herbs for just one batch of mole. Mole is a thick, rich sauce that comes in many variations, contains dozens of ingredients, and can take days to cook. It's also one of the most popular dishes in Evangelina's restaurant, La Cocina Nana Vida. Today, she's preparing a rare kind of mole called chichilo. But it's not on the menu because she only makes it for people who are in mourning.
No me gustaba hacer chichilo porque enterré a seres queridos. Sí da tristeza hacerlo.
Evangelina has dedicated her life to preserving these kinds of traditions and methods. But over the years, she's watched cooks swap metates for blenders and even turned to packaged sauces from the supermarket. We visited Oaxaca, known as the land of the 7 moles, to see how the ancient ways of preparing this classic Mexican dish are still standing. Evangelina buys all ingredients fresh at a local market.
Berito, buenos días. ¿Tienes chile ancho negro?
Ancho chilies are a kind of dried poblano pepper that have a smoky flavor.
Quiero medio de chile ancho, quiero un cuarto de orégano, una bolsita de orégano. Sale, gracias. Hasta luego.
Back at her restaurant, Evangelina preps the onions, garlic, and sesame for roasting. She's part of the Zapotec indigenous group that's lived in the Oaxaca Valley for thousands of years. When someone dies, family usually prepare chichilo together. Evangelina made this batch especially for us, to be able to show the whole process. She puts the meat to boil in a handmade pot, because the beef will take the longest to cook. In the state of Oaxaca, there are 7 types of mole, and every family has their own variation on the recipes.
Decía mi abuela que las semillas esponjaban el estómago. Por eso es que ella nunca las usaba.
Evangelina chars the ingredients on a clay comal, a smooth griddle to bring out the smoky flavors. The ancho chilies go first on high heat.
La importancia de no quemar los ingredientes, sino de irlos asando. Eso es lo que nos va a dar que nuestro chichilo salga cremoso y que no raspe.
When they get the perfect roast, she soaks them for about 30 minutes to rehydrate and soften them. Evangelina wastes no time. She roasts everything quickly, since this mole has to be made faster than other kinds to make it in time for a wake. The metate has been in Evangelina's family for 46 years. These grinding stones are carved whole out of a quarry, and they can weigh more than 50 kilos.
Pero pues moverlo es más práctica, ¿no? Hay que buscarle la forma para hacer caminar un metate.
Some commercial chefs have switched to blenders to make the process faster. But Evangelina says that hand crushing the ingredients makes the paste smoother and helps bring out intense flavors from the spices.
Nuestro compromiso como cocineras tradicionales es rescatar todos estos elementos que hacen de la cocina tradicional esa importancia que tiene, ¿no?
This is the most physically taxing step, and it can take 2 hours just to grind the ingredients.
Pues, ¿qué siento? Satisfacción, cansancio, pero un cansancio rico. Así es, ¿no? Los brazos sí se cansan, sí, le digo, es práctica, es mucha práctica, pero sí. ¿Y los rodillas? Las rodillas también.
Indigenous groups in Mesoamerica have used the metate to make mole since the pre-Hispanic time. It's believed to have originated either here in Oaxaca or just to the north, in what's now known as the state of Puebla. The Spanish arrived in the 15th century, and people started mixing indigenous ingredients like the native chilies with other foods the Spanish brought. So today's mole is a fusion of pre-Hispanic and European cuisines. But the authentic way of making it has dwindled in popularity. Pre-made mole paste came on the market in the 1940s. Blenders became popular in the decades that followed, and they eventually replaced the metate altogether.
El metate que acabo de utilizar es el metate que le dio su madrina a mi mamá cuando se casó. Entonces era como un regalar ahora una licuadora, ¿no?
But Evangelina says traditional mole still beats out the kind made in a blender.
Se pierde precisamente conforme va avanzando la modernidad. Se pierde conforme va avanzando el consumismo, porque ahora ya el mole ya no se prepara nada más para la familia.
Lard is one of the final ingredients she adds. She melts it into a pot and adds the ground paste to fry. Then beef broth and corn dough to make the mole thicker. She stirs until the sauce is the perfect consistency. Fiesta moles that are served at celebrations, like one called Coloradito, have brighter and sweeter, and some even say happier tastes. But this is a funeral mole, so it has a more subdued and muted taste. Evangelina's grandmother taught her how to cook mole when she was just 7 years old. At 20, she learned how to make chichilo mole from the women in her community.
Cuando llegamos al duelo, a dar un pésame a un hogar donde fallece alguien, entre todas nos congregamos para desvenar los chiles, para asar los chiles. Es un platillo es un mole de hermandad, de solidaridad, de compañerismo.
At first, making chichilo mole was a heavy task for Evangelina, because it reminded her of loss. But when she realized she had a chance to preserve and share her culinary knowledge, it took on a new meaning.
Ya no es ahora por como decimos, por amor a la familia, sino ahora es por amor a la comunidad. Siento que es importante mencionar que la cocina tradicional es el alma de nuestro país y la cocina tradicional es el alma de Oaxaca.
In 2017, she registered the brand Nana Vida, named after her grandmother. She exports her mole as well as chocolate to the US and sells them online. And Evangelina's work is getting noticed. This year, her chichilo mole won the award for the best ceremonial dish and another for best decoration at a traditional food festival in Oaxaca. Her restaurant is open for tourist groups and locals who want to eat the traditional food.
A metate sí le da otro sabor, sí le da otra textura. Lo que han hecho ellas, por ejemplo Eva, la cocinera tradicional, pues es importante porque lo va a pasar a sus hijos.
¿Vamos a poner solo un poco?
She hopes her children will fall in love with cooking the same way she has. And if they do, they have her recipe. And of course, her metate.
No lo sé todo, pero lo poco que sé y lo que estoy aprendiendo, pues la intención es difundir. Entonces, eso es lo que queremos hacer. La cocina tradicional yo creo que es esto, es arte, es amor. Desde ahí es la cocina tradicional.